Jordan Worth was born in 1995 and grew up in Stewartby, a small village in Bedfordshire, England. To everyone around her, she seemed like an ordinary, polite young woman. She was intelligent, artistic, and went on to study fine arts at the University of Hertfordshire. Teachers and neighbours remembered her as someone who loved animals, enjoyed painting, and even helped raise money for charities. On the outside, her life looked positive and inspiring, and no one could imagine that behind closed doors she was living a double life, hiding a cruel and violent side that would later shock the entire country. When she was just 16 years old, she met a boy named Alex Skeel. They started dating as teenagers, and at first their relationship seemed normal. Friends described Alex as a kind and cheerful young man, someone who loved football and dreamed of a simple, happy life. Within a couple of years, they moved in together. But soon after living under the same roof, things began to change, and the relationship slowly turned into a nightmare. Jordan started controlling Alex in subtle ways. At first, it was small comments about who he talked to or how he dressed. Then she began restricting his contact with friends and family. Whenever Alex tried to see his relatives, Jordan would make scenes, accuse him of not loving her, or threaten to leave him. Over time, Alex gave in, and soon he was completely cut off from the people who could have helped him. Jordan also took control of his phone and social media accounts. She checked his messages, dictated what he could post, and made sure he had no private conversations. Bit by bit, Alex became isolated, with no one to turn to but Jordan. But the control didn't stop there. Jordan started dictating what he could eat, what clothes he could wear, and where he could sleep. Sometimes she forced him to sleep on the floor instead of in the bed, as a form of punishment. She told him what time to go to bed and when to wake up. What started as emotional control quickly escalated into physical violence. She slapped him, punched him, and kicked him. Then she began using objects, hitting him with household items and knives. She would stab him, leaving wounds on his body. One of the most disturbing parts of her abuse was that she poured boiling water over him multiple times, leaving permanent burns and scars on his arms and back. Alex was living in constant pain, covered in injuries, but Jordan convinced him not to seek medical help. Whenever anyone asked about his wounds, she gave excuses, and Alex, living in fear, stayed silent. Over nearly 5 years, the abuse continued and worsened. Jordan had complete psychological control over him. She had broken his confidence, made him believe he was worthless, and convinced him that no one would help him. Alex lost weight, suffered from untreated infections, and became weaker and weaker. His neighbours occasionally heard shouting and crying from their home, but no one realised how bad the situation truly was. By 2017, Alex's condition had become life-threatening. One night, neighbours heard loud noises and violent arguments. Concerned, they called the police. When officers and paramedics arrived at the house, they were horrified by what they found. Alex was covered in burns, cuts, and bruises. His body was frail and underweight, his wounds were infected, and he was barely able to stand. Doctors later said that if paramedics had not arrived that night, Alex would have been dead within 10 days. The level of abuse he had suffered was compared to torture. Jordan Worth was arrested, and the case went to trial in 2018 at Luton Crown Court. During the trial, the shocking details of Alex's suffering came to light. The court heard how Jordan had manipulated and dominated him for years, how she had stabbed and burned him, and how she had isolated him from everyone he loved. She showed no remorse for her actions. The prosecution explained that Jordan was the one who had complete power in the relationship, and Alex had been her victim in every sense. She was found guilty of grievous bodily harm with intent and of coercive and controlling behaviour, a relatively new criminal offence in the UK at the time. Under the Serious Crime Act of 2015, controlling and coercive behaviour in an intimate or family relationship had been made a criminal offence. But this was one of the very first cases where it was applied against a woman. In fact, Jordan Worth became the first woman in the United Kingdom to ever be convicted of coercive control. The judge sentenced her to 7.5 years in prison. For many, this case was eye-opening because it broke the stereotype that domestic abuse is always committed by men against women. Here, the victim was a man, and the abuser was a woman who had managed to hide her cruelty for years. The media widely covered the story, calling Alex Skeel one of the most abused men in Britain. After the trial, Alex began his slow recovery. Physically, he was left with scars, burns, and permanent damage to his body. Psychologically, he had to rebuild his confidence and his trust in people. But instead of staying silent, he chose to speak out. He gave interviews and appeared in documentaries, determined to raise awareness about male victims of domestic abuse. His story showed the world that abuse has no gender, and that anyone can become a victim if the signs are ignored. Alex's bravery in sharing his experience helped break the stigma and encouraged more men to come forward about their own suffering. The case of Jordan Worth remains one of the most shocking examples of domestic abuse in the UK. It is not only the brutality of her actions that horrified people, but also the way she maintained total control over Alex's life for years, without anyone realizing the scale of what was happening. Today, the story is remembered as a landmark case in British law, showing the importance of recognizing coercive control and taking all victims seriously, regardless of whether they are men or women. Alex Skeel's survival is seen as a miracle, and his decision to turn his pain into awareness continues to inspire and protect others. And that was the shocking story of Jordan Worth, the first woman in the UK to be convicted for coercive and controlling behaviour, and the man who survived years of torture, Alex Skeel. His case reminds us that abuse can happen to anyone, and sometimes the most terrifying monsters hide behind the most ordinary faces. If you found this story eye-opening, make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and share your thoughts. Your support means a lot and helps me bring you even more unbelievable true crime cases from around the world. And trust me, the next story is going to be even darker, even more unbelievable, and you won't want to miss it. Stay tuned.